community. Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records. And there's a new thread, and everybody that watches my videos, all three or four of you, know I love threads. I love opportunity to show records I maybe haven't had an opportunity to show yet. So this thread was started by Eugene. His channel is called "Careful with That Axe," Eugene. It's like that. I like that title. That's a good name for a channel. And he's a Welshman, I believe, and he called this thread a long gap. And I'll put a link to his original video for you to get the details, but it's pretty simple. Show five albums or five artists who had a long gap in their career where they did not put out any new albums. Now, that's not including live stuff and things like that, but didn't do any new studio albums for a long period of time. So I've got five here. You just saw the Backsliders, and the Backsliders were a band out of Raleigh, North Carolina, back in the '90s. They're always looking for the next big thing, and they had the grunge in Seattle, and Athens, the movement in Athens with the B-52s and REM and Python and some of those bands. Well, at one time there was a very strong alt country, alt rock movement in the Raleigh, based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and of course, the artist that emerged from that people outside the area know best would be Ryan Adams. His band was called Whiskey Town, and that's the band that propelled his career and got him the big breaks, as he became a well-known artist. But I'm not going to talk about Ryan Adams or Whiskey Town because they really weren't the best alt rock, alt country band coming out of Raleigh in that period. There were a bunch of really good bands. There was the $2 Pistols. There was Six String Drag. Uh, there was, of course, Whiskey Town, which was previously mentioned, Ryan Adams' band. Trailer Bride, and there were a lot of them. But the one I think was probably the best was the Backsliders, and they were on Mammoth Records. They put out two records, one of them in conjunction with Atlantic, I believe. Throwing Rocks at the Moon, I believe it was called in '96, and in '99 they put out one called Southern Lines, I believe was the name of it. Yeah, Southern Lines in '99. And while the band was still around, you saw them maybe 15 years after were putting out albums and, were getting some recognition as an excellent band. Uh, but they didn't put out any material after that until, and I don't know that I would count this, 2015 put out as, I don't know, a file or something. I don't know all that rigmarole, but some sort of a file, but never as a CD, never as an LP. Uh, Maybe it's some sort of a digital download file or something. But 6 years later, on Record Store Day 2021, they released it as an EP, and this is the Backsliders Rollywood. You can see there, Record Store Day. And this was as a fundraiser for the Shalom Project, which I looked it up at the time, and they do some good things helping people in the community. And it's a Record Store Day release, as I said, so it actually comes out as that. And excellent band, Chip Robinson and Steve Howe, Danny Kurtz, Jeff Dennis, and Greg Rice were the members of the Backsliders. check them out sometime. Next, I've got the great singer-songwriter Billy Joe Shaver. And Billy Joe put his first album out on Monument in, I think it was 73, might have been 71, but early 70s. And he was pretty consistently releasing albums. He did the Monument record. And then in the mid 70s, he did 2 records for Capricorn. And then Columbia picked him up. And he did three records for Columbia, and then different record labels after that, pretty consistently through about the late 1980s. And then in the 90s, his son Eddie played with him. He was an excellent guitarist, Eddie was, and they called themselves just Shaver as a band, and which was really just the two of them. And they put out some albums in the 90s that were very, very good. Unfortunately, Eddie passed away, and Billy Joe continued. The last non-live record, there was bunches and bunches of live releases in the 2000s, but the last studio album was in 2007. It was called Everybody's Brother, until 7 years later, he put this album out, Long in the Tooth. And so 2014, a 7-year hiatus from studio recordings. This is a really good album. It highlights, of course, his songwriting. He lost a couple of fingers early in his life, and so you see that there. Yet still played the guitar. This was produced, interestingly enough, by Ray Kennedy and Gary Nichols. I know both of them by name, not personally. This was on Lightning Rod Records. Ray Kennedy was part of Twang Trust, he and Steve Earle produced Earle stuff and some other artists, including Six String Drag, which I mentioned earlier. And Gary Nicholson did, I associate him with Delbert McClinton, who worked over the years a lot with Delbert McClinton. One of the great singer-songwriters in American history. My third offering is Hot Rise, and this is the album Take It Home on Sugar Hill Records. We got Sugar Hill. Excellent album. This band started around 1978 or so and went very strong through the 1980s. By 1990, they kind of scaled back their activity. They never actually broke up as a band, but they were still doing some live shows together as Hot Rise, but they didn't record anything again for a number of years now. They did not release a new studio album until 2014. And that one is extremely hard to find. Actually, it's somewhere in the stratosphere here, traveling by U.S. Postal Service media mail. Should get it in the next few days. I searched and searched for a copy of it. There are not many out there, and I found one at a reasonable price. Looking forward to getting that. But Hot Rise, one of the great bluegrass bands.
Hector Brown, he lives on a farm. He's been a farmer all his life, until he had to slow down when his heart broke down. He went under a surgeon's knife, and the 4 kids that he raised all lived so far from home. Since his wife died last December, Hector's all alone. And if you're not thinking a man could be tell you, my friend, he's just like you.
Next up, we've got Little Feat, one of the great, great bands of all time. I love Little Feat, and I hope you do too. Little Feat, of course, started out in 69 or so. First album out by 71. They had a little more than a decade or about a decade run. Uh, the death of Lowell George, the band decided not to keep going. There was a 10-year hiatus, and then they regrouped and started back uh, touring and recording, and they have continued since then. But they've gone long periods of time without new material. They put out a lot of stuff on Hot Tomato, their label, lots of live stuff and outtakes and things like that. But as far as studio albums, they don't do that many. They're a touring band. That's their mainstay. In 2012, they put this album out, Rooster Rag. Always great covers on Little Feat albums. And this album, excellent, by the way, excellent. Uh, Rooster Rag, No Excuses, No Regrets. They did not release a new studio album until 12 years later when Sam's Place came out. This is not your typical Little Feat album, as this allows the great Sam Clayton to take the dominant role here as the main singer on this. This is a blues and R&B album, and Little Feat plays blues and R&B, but this is the whole album is like that, rather than it being just part of a gumbo mix of musical sounds. This is a really good album. They came back out the next year, this year with Strike Up the Band, which is an excellent album, lots of new material on it. So they're still going, they're still active after all these years. And finally, the longest uh, pause between albums or between studio recordings, because these weren't albums to begin with, they were 78 schlacks. But 1928, Mississippi John Hurt sat down in the studio and cut about a dozen or more tracks. It didn't go anywhere. They didn't sell well or anything. And he simply went back to his work in rural Mississippi on a farm and continued to live his life until in 1963 somebody went looking for him. He wasn't discovered because he knew where he was. He wasn't lost or anything. He knew where he was. But other people wondered. They heard these old 78s and they said, I wonder if we can find this guy. And they found him in 1963 or so. And, told him, hey, people really like what you did. And he could barely even remember he recorded those songs. But they convinced him to pull up stakes, move to D.C., and start a late life career as a musical performer. Mississippi John Hurt. So 1928 is when these recordings were made. They were released over the next year or two, 28, 29, and even I think one or two of them weren't released until 1930. None of them sold much of anything. Uh, he did an album, I believe it was Piedmont Records, in 63, one in 64, and they continued on in the next few years until his passing. But interesting, he's Mississippi John Hurt, but his style of playing is very delicate, very much reminiscent of the ragtimey uh, Piedmont blues that you would find in places like North and South Carolina, rather than Mississippi. Uh, what a great musician he was. So here is some to close us out. Some Mississippi John Hurt after his rediscovery. And as I'll let him play us out, I'll just remind everybody to be kind to your neighbors. Love your neighbors, people, because, folks, we're all neighbors. We need more love in this world and a lot less hate.
Walk and play yourself. That's right. You got to walk that lonesome valley. Well, you got to walk it for yourself. Ain't nobody here can walk it for you. You got to walk the Red Valley for yourself. My mother had to walk that lonesome valley. Well, she had to walk it for herself. It's nobody here could walk it for her. Yeah, she had to walk the Red Valley for herself. Oh yeah, she got to walk that lonesome